Hi everyone, this is Anto Chávez with Be Latina News. I'm jumping back in. This is our second try, and I'm talking to Thomas Allen Harris. So he is a filmmaker and artist, as I was telling you all, and his work really focuses on highlighting the search for identity, family, and spirituality. But today we're specifically touching on one of his films called Vintage Families of Value, and it came out in 1995. So we're really exploring what it meant for him to create it back then and what it means now. And we'll get to know him a little bit better and listen to his journey in the industry, basically. And just so you all know, this will be an IG Live series that I'll be conducting for this month, for Black History Month, where I'll be interviewing different filmmakers who are part of Revry's Black History Month programming. And you all are welcome to go online, look up their schedule, because they're really playing some amazing films that you should check out. And so let's get this conversation started. Let me double check that Thomas is here, and let's get to know him a little better.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm feeling very orange.
Don't worry. How's everything? I'm glad we were able to make it.
Me too, me too. I'm doing well. Been doing a lot of press lately, a lot of different events. And I was like, why am I like so popular right now? And I pinched myself and I realized, oh, it's Black History Month.
That's all. Oh my God, that's awful.
No, but it's like, it's great. It's great. I mean,
It's
it's not.
great. It's great. It's great, but you should be popular all year round. And I am on board with that. Yeah. So yeah, let's start. Let's jump right in. I talked a little bit about you and your bio, but I would love to have you introduce yourself and just tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Okay, thank you so much, Anton. So, my name is Thomas Allen Harris, and I'm a filmmaker and a media artist. And for the last X number of years, 30 years, I have been doing a kind of participatory model of filmmaking, which involves like in each film, it's very different. But with Vintage Families of Value in 1990. I gave video cameras to 3 different queer families and asked them, they had siblings, 2 siblings in each family, and asked them to interview one another about like their life, their gender orientation, their sexuality, their relationship to parents. And it was this like kind of community model of filmmaking. But what was interesting is once I gave the camera to people, they were like, okay, you did this to me when I was 13 years old. Why did you do that? Blah, blah. So it became this like tool, like the person who was like, I guess the person who was the less dominant person felt
Yeah.
like they were empowered with the video camera. And so all of a sudden we had these like intense dynamic conversations. And so, since then I've been making these different projects that really kind of change people and like cause transformations, whether it's like small groups or large groups. I went to South Africa when my dad died. He was my stepdad. And I took his photographic album back to South Africa. And a lot of people had forgotten the generation that he was part of that left to create a global anti-apartheid movement. And so part of what I did was I introduced the album and the story and got these young actors to recreate the journey and why they left.
Wow.
And so like I've been doing projects, and so now it's like almost like a national holiday, this group, because people didn't know about them. And so I do these things that eventually end up as films, but they're like beyond the film, and they also like really foreground queer narratives, because that's what I love. It's like queer people have been here forever and ever and ever, and will be here forever and ever, and like really helping to like see like our power, like because it's not just about like who we sleep with and who we make family with, but it's also like the unique power that queer people have in terms of the way in which we help communities kind of see themselves, shape themselves. And so that's part of what I do with my work.
Yeah. And so was this film specifically like Vintage Families of Value, kind of a documentary style then?
Yeah, it was documentary. So basically, it was like everyone who was in the film was the people who their siblings were shooting them, and then I also asked them to create kind of like fantasy sequences, like that they would like shoot on Super 8, and would talk about their relationship to their family. And so one took place in the cemetery. Like, you know, she took all these things, like Annie took like her doll, she took a whip, she took all these things and a basketball to the cemetery. She did this performance in the cemetery.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, so it was like, so she was actually at that time, it was right before, you know, the WBA kind of broke, and she was almost like there. And so that was part of her like dream. And so, you know, so it was also very healing. Like a lot of my work is also, and that's what I think that queer people like do. We could bring like, you know, the healing energy, transformative energy. And so it was, so it goes between these discussions between siblings and these kind of fantasy sequences. And so it was between three different families, including me and my brother.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was like, and my mom still hasn't forgiven me for like the first, the
The
first shot.
exposure.
Well, we started shooting when she was in a green mask. She was doing a facial, and she and my brother were doing facials. I was doing it too, but I was behind the camera.
Yeah. Wow, that's
And
really,
so, and then
really
she was
cool.
also eating an orange. So it was very kind of primal, you know, surreal, you know, and so in our kitchen, my mom's kitchen, and but I think she secretly like loved it.
I'm sure she does. Yeah. And so, like in general, more widely across your works, why are you so interested in identity and family? You know, what's so special about that, and how do you explore? I know you've talked a little bit about it, but how do you explore that in this film?
Um, well, in this particular film, it was like I think like identity is like, you know, are superficial, like, you know, like, you know, I'm, you know, cis male, and you know, but also like the boxes I check, maybe queer, but there are also these other kinds of identity, like sometimes like in the family I am like, I'm the oldest, you know, and then my brother's the youngest. And so there's certain dynamics that happen like within any family, like, you know, in terms of parents, and, you know, and so I think that that's an identity. It doesn't really kind of get discussed, but is like so important because it influences these other identities.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if you have siblings or not, but you know, maybe you relate. You know, so for me, it was like about that core identity. What's our relationship to, like, you know, my father, for instance, or my mother? What's my relationship to, you know, femininity and to masculinity, and you know, how can I like accept myself? Like, because I felt like as a kid, it was like I still have those scars. Like, you know, this guy would come up to me and say, "Hey, Thomas, like most boys, you know, this is like in the sixth grade. He said most boys are like 10% girl and 90% boy. And he says you're 40% girl and
Oh
60%
my
boy,
God.
or something like that, right? Because and it was just like I love to play with dolls, and so it was just like, you know, I can be like, you know, creating a space that's safe for me to be, and also as a filmmaker, like coming into myself as a filmmaker in the 90s, it was like, you know, it wasn't easy to be queer back then. And it wasn't easy to like be outside of like, you know, kind of this kind of posturing about Black masculinity or maleness, you know? And so I also grew up partly in East Africa. I had, you know, as I said, my dad was South African. So I had this other, you know, I had this other kind of worldview. You know, traveled through in different ways. And I lived in Europe for a year in France. And so it was like a way, like my films are a way to kind of like make space for myself. Like now in this like age of digital media, we can actually access like, you know, African film, European film, you know, Afro-European film. And, you know, I also made a film in Brazil, you know, around the Orisha, and like thinking about like looking for my Orisha, who, you know, had a certain kind of similar kind of balance in terms of masculine and feminine. and it was and to like have another kind of reference
Yeah.
for like who I am.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's about like, for me, like creating space and also creating family.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And all of what you said right now, and also the fact that you and your brother were included in the project, I think talked a little bit about like this question that I'm gonna ask. But aside from that, maybe in the editing or everything else that goes into the film, which is a lot, how did your personal experiences and background influence vintage families of value?
Um, yeah, my personal experience is like I come from a family of activists, so I wanted to use my filmmaking as being activist, and I actually see a friend of mine from Brazil, Vanya Lima is on, who's now actually living in France. Hi, Vanya, how are you? And and my cousin Rukia Sibongale is on too. I haven't been watching
Yay.
who's joining. So yeah, so we come from a family that is like activist, that is rooted in like Black history, and also our family is rooted in the African Methodist Episcopal Church,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like really solid in the church, but they also had the church at home, so it was an open house, so there were always people coming from other places. With my grandparents, it was like people, the neighbors, my cousins. We had, there was always this family, like, I think like people of color, have this extended family, this diasporic family. Hey, from Morocco. And
Yay.
so I mean, that idea that we can, that love has no bounds, that the love is so abundant that we could like, be there and really open space for other people as activists as well. And so that was a big part of my growing up. And I also, my grandmother made me like volunteer to be the pastor, not the pastor, but like say the prayers in the church. So I would actually say these prayers every Sunday, pray. So I feel like sometimes my work is like okay, like I mean, in my ideal self, I would like be like every word that comes from my mouth should really be a prayer, like an affirmation, like and I think that like but sometimes I slip up. I'm like self-criticize, right? And I'm like, no, I want to be like like positivity, and so I try to do that with my work.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I love that. That's really beautiful. But I also imagine that, like you mentioned a little bit, like your upcoming, and especially in the 90s and making all these films and being openly queer, must have been challenging too. So what are some of the obstacles that you've encountered throughout your career?
Yeah, like, I think it's important to like make space for like people coming up behind me. And so like, at that time when I was like making this work, like Vintage Families of Value, like the New York Times wasn't even like mentioning that gay people had partners, or that they were like, and if you thought about gay people, you weren't thinking about like people of color. And so it was really important for me to like, be and do the best I could do, in terms of um, using my camera to highlight, these folks, and like I did in Vintage Families of Value. But also to I guess the challenge is that like, to in some ways be uncompromising in terms of that, like in terms of like, this is who I am. I'm not going to like, play somebody else for, in the work. And so I would say like, Vintage Families of Value, that film was made in 1995, but it didn't show in the Black American Film Festival until 11 years after it was made. So it was like, it showed at FESPACO in Burkina Faso, it showed at Toronto International Film Festival, it showed in Brazil. So I felt like especially in like, that really cemented my relationship with the diaspora, because I was Afro-Canadians, Afro-Brazilians were like embracing the work, African folks embracing the work. And so it made me think, wow, this is like so powerful, because I don't have to be constrained by the boundaries. And so my work, from then on really was about like speaking to an audience in dialogue with an international audience. And even though I made a film that was really specifically about American representation of Black folks and Black photographers, it was called Through a Lens Darkly, Black Photographers and the Emergence of the People, that I made with Deborah Willis, who is the queen of Black photography. And but people outside of America, Black folk, like, in Britain or wherever, they were like, wow, I get so much from this film because it gives me a history, even though it's not my specific history.
Yeah.
And then I just been moving forward in that kind of that train of or that path, and it led me to actually make a series called Family Pictures USA, which we got some money to do, and it was on PBS, and it looks at America through the lens of the family album. So I try to use yeah. So it showed last year.
Wow, congrats. Yay.
And if people want to buy a pillow.
Oh, there you go. Ah, I love it. Yes.
It can also be a hat.
There you go. But yeah, I really hear you. And I think the more specific a story is, especially on the screen, like, I think it'll speak to a bigger audience. Like, specificity is key in storytelling. So I'm really glad that it got to so many people internationally. And for like young Black filmmakers who, are struggling and are going through all of these things that you were thinking back then, and maybe you're still, struggling with some of it because that's life. But when you're young, that's like, it's intense to navigate. So what would you advise them? What would you tell them?
Well, I think it's really important to like make stuff that you really feel in your heart, and make stuff that's very true to you. I think it's important to collaborate with people that you love and that are part of your community, and also your family. Because I teach as well. So I teach a lot of young filmmakers. I teach at Yale, and I teach a course called Family Narratives, Cultural Shifts, and that looks at films made by filmmakers who use their own family archives to tell stories of larger global movements. And I teach a production course called Archive Aesthetics and Community Storytelling.
I wish I would have had you as my professor.
Well, you could actually, I could send you the link so you can see some of my students' work. It's amazing work. Yeah. So like, I give people like, younger filmmakers a way to like remix their family archives with larger archives. And when I say family, I'm talking about like community, the open definition of family. And so I think it's important to do that, and then to like get it into festivals, to upload it, to share it, to think about how their work can help like open ways for other people, open ways for different expressions of identity, of family, of community. I think that like, we have like we're like the last year, for instance, we've just been so inundated with images like, of violence against the Black body, and so how can we also balance that with images that feed our soul, that talk about the dimensionality of who we are, outside of the prism of like, a racialized American identity. And so that is something I think, and also like, bring on the ancestors, bring them here, ground them here. Spirituality is not something you should run away from. If you're a filmmaker, whether fiction or documentary, you can ground it in all these different ways. And in part, that's why I went to Brazil to look for my Orisha and look for the other ways of existing and communing with energies.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it will help a lot of filmmakers who are watching out there or who will watch later, because this video will live in our page. So yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, since it's going to live in your page, I'll show you this is the real hat. That was just a kind of a funny hat.
Oh, yeah.
Pictures USA hat. We have these on our Family Pictures USA website. And if you want to support, like, our work, you can go there and buy one of our things. And that's something else I tell, like, you know, young Black filmmakers, like, you know, have something that you could, like, you know, sell a memento, you know, so people can, like, you know, buy your stuff and support you in different ways, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and look good
There you go.
and sleep well.
I love this. So besides that, how can people support your work? Can you tell us where can they find you? Where can they go to, know about you more?
Okay, so you can go, when you Google me, you'll immediately be taken to the Yale website. But you could find our work by going to familypicturesusa.com and check out our blogs, because we definitely help people like create blogs, and we upload their blogs to our website. And their blogs for me are like the beginning, it's like the first draft of a script, you know, for a short film. So if you're interested in doing a short film about your family, you know, think about doing a blog, submit it to Family Pictures, we'll post it, get it out there. Who knows who's going to get back to you. So you can support our work by joining us in terms of our creativity. You could share, we have an amazing YouTube channel, Family Pictures USA. So you can check out our stuff. It's like stories from all across the country, some from Brazil and Canada. And so please check them out and share them. I have two films that are on YouTube right now. Vintage Families of Value is there, but it's also actually on Revry. So I
Yeah.
would actually check it out on Revry first. But you can see the conversation with me and Rajendra Roy, who's the head curator at MoMA, and he's also a mentee of mine, and Shar, who's a chief curator at Sundance, and she was a collaborator of mine. And so these people I've known for a long time. So we had an amazing conversation around vintage, and there's another conversation with the people who were the siblings who I shot and who collaborated with me on vintage. So you could see them like 30 years later and see what's going on. And so some
Cool.
secrets get told. So you check those out. And then I also have Through a Lens Darkly on YouTube. I put it out in response to Black Lives Matter, you know, and the dialogues that were happening. It normally was like behind a paywall. And so like this last year, I just wanted to get it out there. And we haven't done that much marketing, but it has almost like 8,000 views. And, you know, and then I did put 12 Disciples of Nelson Mandela for a short time. It's on YouTube. I haven't really been promoting it because it is it's now on the World Channel, on the PBS World Channel. They licensed it for the next few years, and so so I'm not sure how long I'll be able to keep it up. But check it out on the World Channel. And I mean, if you want to send us money,
go ahead.
right. And yeah, and so and if you're like part of a university, you can tell the school to buy our films from Third World Newsreel, or to have me come and do a presentation. I'm doing a screening and a talk at USC next month, University of Southern California Cinema Department, and a bunch of other.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, thank you so much for that. Well, I really appreciate your time, and it was so lovely to speak with you and to get to know you and your work a little better. So
thank you, and thanks for doing your show and having me on. It's really great. It's so good to see the next generations coming up and rocking it.
Yeah, thank you. I love your background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize when I was going to put my orange like hoodie on that it was also going to be like an orange background. But this is like more rust, right? So it's not quite as orange as that. So
yeah. Well, have a great day, Thomas. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing a lot about the film. And I hope everybody goes check it out and sends y'all money.
Hey, Ashe.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. Ciao.
Ciao.